Talk about the Wednesday Wars by Gary D. Schmidt. Amazing book. I think this is also accompanied by OK for Now, which is an amazing book. Okay, and so we're gonna start with September and go all the way to November, right? Because like the chapters are sort of based on the months, or all the way from page 1 to 72, at least in my copy, so that's why this is September to November. Okay, so we learned that Mrs. Baker hates Holling's guts. Do you think that's true or not? And how would you describe Holling? Would you describe him as good or bad? And who would you compare Mrs. Baker hating Holling and Holling, how would you compare this relationship, not a very good relationship, between Mrs. Baker and Holling? I think of it as Darth Vader and Luke. Luke is going to be Holling, Darth Vader, Mrs. Baker. And why do you think that Mrs. Baker does not like Holling? Do you think it's like just something that, is it because like people just hate people's guts, or do you think that is something else? And how would you describe Doug Swiatek? OK for Now is actually focused on Doug Swiatek, and I've read OK for Now. It's an amazing book. I'll tell you, it's as good as the Wednesday Wars. If for people who like a spoiler, it's not like a huge spoiler that will be like ruin the whole story. It's like a little spoiler that literally happens in the first chapter of the book. Literally, I'm not kidding. So you might as well know it, but still, if you don't, then you don't have to really. Okay. And anyway, I wanted to ask you: has anybody in your life hated your guts for like the first time you meet? Not because you did anything to them, but just like for the first time somebody hated your guts. Never have that experience, but many people who I felt that were good guys, I hate their guts enough. Okay, what do you think about his mother's smoking habit? What do you think about that? And also, I wanted to ask you, what do you think about the perfect house? What I wanted to ask you about this was, do you think that this perfect house is more perfect or more livable? And do you think that I'm more comfortable and livable? And I have a question. Do you think that being more fancy and good looking and perfect, do you think that's what matters? Or do you think that to be comfortable and warm and cozy, do you think that's what matters? And what do you think about Holling's dad's response? Did you like it or did you hate it? And if it had been Holling, how would you have responded to this? I would have been very angry, but at the same time, I don't think that Holling's dad is like the guy you want to really argue with, And now there was his sister, right? What do you think about how would you describe Holling's sister? And when you describe somebody, just tell the traits of that person. if you like him or her not, things like that. Okay, and do you think that dumb luck is something that you can count down or not? Okay, now I wanted to ask you all in all, what do you think about Holling's family? I wanted to ask you about, so what do you think about Meryl Lee Kowalski, right? And also, do you think that love and hate are not very far apart in 7th grade? Also, I wanted to ask you, Mrs. Baker, do you think that Mrs. Baker, do you think that she's really evil or not? And and sort of like the thought that she's evil, does that make like the story much more entertaining? To me, it does. And at lunchtime, you know, Holling was very afraid to go outside because Mrs. Baker had probably, gotten an 8th grader, right? And so, what do you think about Mrs. Baker and Mrs. Baker forcing Holling to go out? Do you think that this is fair or not, right? And then Doug Swiatek's brother, Don, right? That this guy is like a criminal. And what did you think about this, right? And what did you think about this? And do you think that Mrs. Baker really did recruit this Doug Swiatek's brother or not? Because think about it, maybe she did recruit Doug Swiatek's brother, because why was Doug Swiatek's brother suddenly come up to Holling? It's not just a coincidence, in my opinion. But we're gonna have to go a little more in the book to understand more about Mrs. Baker. And let me just tell you, the book changes. I'll only say that. But anyway, I wanted to ask you, do you think that, Doug Swiatek's brother, right? Do you think that, like how Holling tripped Doug Swiatek's brother? What do you think about this? Do you think that this was fair or not? Because remember, it wasn't just, tripping, like the iron of the goalpost. It was suddenly bent. Bent, guys. Bent. If you had been Doug Swiatek's brother, how would you have reacted to this? Or would you have just fainted because of it? And then, what do you think about Mrs. Baker, right? Mrs. Baker, what did you think would be next for attacking Doug, right? And so she gave really, for diagramming sentences, to Meryl Lee, she gave, the brook flows down the pretty mountain. Danny Hupfer, he kicked the round ball into the goal. And to my feet, the girl walked home, right? And then to Doug Swiatek, I read a book. And now, for Holling, she gave, for it so falls out that what we have we prize, not to the worthwhiles we enjoy it, but being lacked and lost why when we rack the value, when we find the virtue that possession would not show us while it was ours. First of all, I want to ask you, did you understand this sentence? I'm pretty sure if I looked up some words, I could probably understand that, but just by listening to it, no way. Do you think that it was because Mrs. Baker hated Holling's guts? Or do you think it's maybe because Mrs. Baker saw that Holling was really smart and she wanted to challenge Holling? But I think it's number one. Mrs. Baker hated Holling's guts. Right? And then, so, do you think that no native speaker of the English language could diagram the sentence? That's what Holling thought. Do you think that's true? I think it is, so, And then the PA called for Doug not for Doug Swiatek. Sorry, I was reading OK for Now again, and so I'm still thinking about Doug Swiatek. It's an amazing book. Let me just tell you. Okay, Hauling. Okay, but anyway, Hauling. What did you think about this? And what do you think about this announcement? And then now, what do you think about Mr. Gorashi? Sorry if I mispronounced that. What do you think about him? Describe him as a simile. And I also wanted to ask you, Mrs. Baker, she said that Hauling maybe needed to go do 6th grade mathematics again. What did you think about this? Did you think that this was fair? And do you think that Mrs. Baker was doing it out of concern concern. I think that's how you do it. Yeah, concern for Hauling. Or do you think it's more of being an evil person like Darth Vader and just hating Hauling's guts? And also, I wanted to ask you about, October, right? We're going to October now, so we've read about a whole month, okay? And then, so I wanted to ask you about the Wednesdays of September. What do you think about the Wednesdays of September? This is Wednesdays all in all. What did you think about them? And how would you describe them? And do you think that because of this, that Hauling would probably get some sort of lung disease that will kill him? I think so, because if you smoke, that's one lung, and if you breathe bad things, then your lungs, they get bad, your throat and all that, and then you might really die. That's how sometimes cancer gets formed. Okay, but anyway, I wanted to ask you about Hauling's father and how he said, how he was talking about Kowalski and his associates and how the Baker Sporting Emporium, this architect choices. What do you think about this? Do you think that this means that Hauling's dad is a good dad or not? And also, I wanted to ask you, Mrs. Baker, right? Mrs. Baker, what I wanted to ask you about Mrs. Baker was, do you think, what I wanted to ask you about was Doug Swiatek's brother. Doug Swiatek, he didn't want to go back to school, so he began pounding erasers, right? Would you have done the same thing if you had been Doug Swiatek? I wouldn't have done it that crazily, but I might have done a little, And then I wanted to ask you about, geography for you and me, right? And there was also and what do you think about this? Geography for you and me. Do you think that this is a very good title for a book or not? And also, I wanted to ask you about this. And what I wanted to ask you about was, Meryl Lee, right? What I wanted to ask you about that was, so Colin keeps on asking, do you think Mrs. Baker looks like an evil genius, or Mrs. Baker hates my guts? Do you think that Mrs. Baker really is an evil genius? And I also wanted to ask you about, Mrs. Baker, right? So there was some pastries that Mrs. Bigelow made, right? So, what do you think about so he put it on here, right? If you have been hauling, would you have taken one, or would you have known that you would be in trouble, right? And then there was also like, he was now pounding, So now I wanted to ask you about this, right? And now the classroom began to fill again, and people were looking at it, right? At the cream puffs. If you had been them, would you have been interested in the cream puffs or not? Because you knew that it was going to somewhere else. And what I wanted to ask you was, all in all, do you think that eating a cream puff would be good for you or not good for you? And then, you know how like everybody is giving death threats? How did you like this? And we know that even my Fee said, "I know you're home." Which threat did you find the most ominous? And if you had been hauling, what would you have done? And then Miss Hauling was like, pounding the erasers, and maybe he could have a cream puff, right? Anyway, so he was like pounding the erasers, right? And then he saw the dust go toward the fourth window. Oh man. So he was like running up again, but it was too late, right? And I wanted to ask you about what I wanted to ask you about was, do you think that this will make Holland go in trouble or not? And another thing I wanted to ask you about is, do you think that Mrs. Baker intentionally wanted to do this to Holland or not? I wanted to ask you about this. And what I wanted to ask you about was, what did you think about the wives of the Vietnam soldiers, right? And I wanted to ask you, how Mrs. Beagle, she said that they weren't that bad, and she opened her mouth, ate and chewed and swallowed, and then she had to go to the St. Ignatius Hospital, right? What did you think about this? Did you think that this was humorous, or do you think that this was not very humorous or not? And also, now I wanted to ask you about Holling's sister. What do you think about that flower? A flower child. Do you agree with Holling's dad, or do you agree with Holling's sister? And so I'm gonna just read something that Holling's sister said about flower childs. We believe in peace and understanding and freedom. We believe in sharing and helping each other. We're going to change the world. And then his father responds, a flower child is a hippie who lives in Greenwich Village in dirty jeans and beads and who can't change a pair of socks. Whose argument do you think is better? And if you had been a kid back then in 1967, would you have become a flower child or not? And also, I wanted to ask you about Mrs. Baker, right? Because what I wanted to ask you about was how Mrs. Baker said for another cream puff, perhaps, right? And here's the thing, all the other kids began to talk about it because another, and now they're like, if you have, how much they have to, all of the class cream puffs, right? What did you think about this? And do you think that, what did you think about this? And do you think that this was fair or not, right? And now, Shakespeare, right? What do you think? Do you think that Shakespeare really is bad? And have you ever, read Shakespeare before? I haven't really. Never had the chance. I do want to read Shakespeare, but like how it's in Old English and it's like, thou shalt not, I'm not just very, not very, let's just say, I don't really like that kind of language. It's too hard to understand. I could probably understand, it's just, complicated for no reason. Well, there is a reason, but, do you think, and I wanted to ask you, what do you think about Sycorax and Caliban? What do you think about those rats? What do you think they symbolize in the book, really? And, oh, no, sorry, not about that. First of all, how would you describe them? And like how when Lieutenant Tybalt Baker had picked them out, they're only cute balls of fuzz, and now they weren't cute balls of fuzz, right? I'm gonna just read something and I'm gonna read a quote. It said this: they looked like they weighed about 15 pounds each. They had hair the color of cardboard in splotches over parts of their bodies, but mostly they were just yellow and scabby skinned. If anyone even looked at them, they threw themselves against the side of their cage and stuck their scabby snouts out as far as they could and clacked their long yellow teeth together. The sounds that came out of their throats were never heard anywhere else in nature. What do you think that this change from cute fuzzy balls of fuzz to this? What do you think that this symbolizes? And also, I wanted to ask you, what happened? They escaped, right? What I wanted to ask you about was if you had been them, how would you have reacted to this, right? And then I wanted to ask you, what did you think about this whole thing in the first place? Do you think that this was funny or do you think that this was terrible? And then, now I wanted to ask you, so they began to read this, right? And what I wanted to ask you about this was, now Holling says this, but the Merchant of Venice was okay. Whoa! So I'm gonna have to check that one out, right? But here's the thing. Remember how I said that Shakespeare was a little complicated? For the people who figured it out, good for you. I'm gonna have to try some Shakespeare next time. After I have a big reading list. I have to get that one in. Okay, I just wrote it down. Okay. Anyway, I just wrote Shakespeare. Well, I didn't write it. I wrote it in my head. Okay, and I'm just gonna read some parts. Like, like how there's a few sentences from The Merchant of Venice. I'm gonna read, and then you tell me, do you think that these sentences seem very good and exciting, and the book is and William Shakespeare is going to be great, or do you think they sound hard and complicated and not fun at all? Okay, here. But I'm gonna read one of them. But mercy is above this sceptred sway, is enthroned in the hearts of kings. And I'm gonna read another one. Go thou ahead, droppeth thine succor ball as thunder from the clouds upon his head beneath thee. Or another one, the quality of mercy is not strange. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. What do you think about that? Some I could actually understand, you know? And then, do you like tragedies or do you like comedies? Or do you think that there has to be a mix of that in life, or else your life will either be too bad or too good? Because this is a very important part. If you only had two goods, okay, like everything was amazing, then things won't be amazing anymore because everything was. So it would just be normal, right? But if there were bad things, then good things would actually stand out, right? Okay guys, November, which is sort of like our last chapter, but then November itself isn't very much of a chapter. But I still like the chapters and how they're arranged by months, right? Okay, now I wanted to ask you, so there was this roof, like the ceiling, and then when you looked up, something rained down, and moldy stuff got into its mouth. Do you think that Holling's dad deserved this? I think so, but that's only my opinion. Your opinion is also very important. What do you think about the curses that he learns from Shakespeare? And when I read that, I gotta really say I gotta read Shakespeare. These are just amazing. The curses, it's like this: a southwest blow on ye and blister you all o'er. But like like how I sort of, I can do it very dramatically like this. The red plague the red plague rid of you. Sorry. The red plague rid you. No, the red plague rid you. Or toes, beetles, bats light on you. Or as wicked do as ere my mother brushed with raven's feather from unwholesome fen drop on you. I actually don't know what the last one means, but it sounds very bad. And okay, so I wanted to ask you, so I'm just gonna read something, okay? It's like this. By the second Tuesday night, I had gotten it down and could say toads with a blood-curdling croak when my mother knocked on my bedroom door. I'm gonna try that, okay? You can try that too if you can. Toads. Was that right? I might be pretty wrong. I'm not very good at my voice, I'm not very good singer. And then Mrs. Baker, okay? And so Holling said the rhythm of it. So he liked the rhythm of it. If you've ever read Shakespeare, did you like the rhythm of it? What do you think that the rhythm of it, what do you think it means? It's not music like rhythm. What do you think that this rhythm of it means? Do you think that Holling can sing soprano? Well, just wanted to ask you a question. Are you a big fan of singing, And also, what do you think about, how Miss Violet mistaked Meryl Lee as flirting with Holling? If you have been Meryl Lee, how would you have reacted to this? Okay, and I also wanted to ask you, how Doug Swiatek's brother heard Holling say "pie ninny," right? And then so he asked about it, right? And of course, Holling had to lie, and he was like this: it means someone who's so stupid that he's eaten all these pies and gotten really sick. Sick, like he's going to throw up all over himself. That's sick. What did you think about that? And would you call your gym teacher a pie ninny? So what I wanted to ask you about this was, Goldman's Bakery, right? So, like how Mr. Goldman said, I need a boy who knows Shakespeare, right? I wanted to ask you, what did you think about this at first? What did you think that this was all about, right? But Holly knew it. So he got 22 cream puffs. And I wanted to also ask you about, like how they went into they were running back into like the classroom, right? And then Sycorax and Caliban were eating the cream puffs. How did you feel about this? How do you think that Holly felt about this? And how do you think that the rest of the class felt about this, right? And I also wanted to ask you, what do you think is going to happen to Holly? Because I'm pretty sure that a few more death threats will be around, right? Do you think that Holly will die? It could happen. And anyway, I now wanted to ask you about Ariel, right? And the feathers were attached to the, I'll just tell you, not a very good place, okay? And if you had been Holly, would you have just quit or run away? And what do you think about the things that Holly gets himself into? Do you think that Holly's life would be even worth living? Because, well, of course it will be worth living, but my point is, what do you think about the things that Holly gets into? Do you think that it's sort of like an adventure, or do you think it's actually just a miserable life? And also, I wanted to ask you about this, okay? And what I wanted to ask you about was this. So when they got back from recess, there were 24 brown, light, perfect cream puffs, right? Because remember how like Holly got 5 cream puffs, right? If you had been the rest of the class, how would you have reacted to this, right? And then Mrs. Baker comes in with 24 brown, light, perfect cream puffs. I just like saying that, it's just so melodious and lofty. But anyway, so if you had been Holly, how would you have thought about Mrs. Baker? Do you think that Mrs. Baker is changing and that maybe she isn't hating Holly's guts anymore? And why do you think that Mrs. Baker did this in the first place? And also, I also wanted to ask you about this. Do you think that Caliban, the monster, deserves a happy ending? Because even if you haven't read Shakespeare, you should know, do you think that a monster deserves a happy ending? And also, Mrs. Biggio, she began to cry and wail, and Holly said that he will never forget the sounds. When you read that, how did you feel toward Mrs. Biggio? And what did you guess? And we found that Mrs. Biggio's husband had died, right? If you had been Mrs. Biggio, how would you have described what Mrs. Biggio felt? And then the last sentence of this chapter or this month is this. And sometimes the quality of mercy is strained. Do you agree with that? I do. I totally agree with that. Quality of mercy, it's pretty strained. It's like this. I waited, and I was at SeaWorld, okay? Okay, so first of all, I live near SeaWorld. It's like a 20-30 minute drive away to SeaWorld. San Diego, I live in San Diego. And so I really like SeaWorld. And so I went on this really cool ride, okay? And SeaWorld has a lot of shows. So I even missed one show just for that ride. First of all, I had to wait 2 hours. Bad enough. Second of all, it was very boring. Third of all, just as we got to the front, I'm not kidding, we were at the last line, like the last row of people waiting, okay? Literally, I'm not kidding. I'm not really being dramatic. I'm not kidding. And then the ride broke down. It wasn't like anyone was hurt or anything. It was just that, because it was a raft ride, so the water kept on going, but some of the machinery broke down. But then again, maybe the quality of the Mercy is not strained, because after that, it started up again. But still, I think that maybe the Forza's Mercy was a little strained over there, okay? And then it began to go okay again. Well, guys, we finished for today the Wednesday Awards, an amazing Newbery Honor winning book. So I hope that you enjoyed these chapters, and we are going to keep on reading the Wednesday Awards. It's a really emotional book, and as you go more and more, there's a lot of feelings and things, and you really do learn more about everything, okay? And so that I hope that you enjoyed today. So I have a few last questions. What's your favorite character in the story, and your least favorite character? And what's your favorite part so far in the story? Also, how do you like the story so far? Do you like this, or do you not like this? Some people don't like, the thing of how people hate other people's guts. But I love this book, so I hope that you enjoy this book, even if you don't enjoy it now. And I'm pretty sure that you enjoy it. Finally, what do you think is going to happen next to Holling and Ariel, the fairy? And what do you think is going to happen next between Holling and Mrs. Baker? Well, guys, keep reading. That's my motto. If you've seen some of my videos, you might know that's my motto. Keep reading. So keep on reading. Reading opens